Welcome to the Living Well Church podcast, and thanks for tuning in today. Our mission as a church is to help people find faith in Jesus and a life of purpose and hope. You're about to watch a message that will challenge you, inspire you, encourage you, and most of all, point you to Jesus and the life of purpose and hope He has planned for you. So lean in and enjoy, and let God speak into your life.
Good morning. The eagle-eyed among you may have noticed that last time I preached, I forgot to bring my Bible up on stage with me, which I remember this time, so we're off to a good start. So today we're going to continue looking at the fruits of the Spirit, which are found in Galatians. And over the last few weeks we've looked at joy, peace and faithfulness. And today we're going to look at kindness. So kindness is a strange thing, because I think lots of people all over the world, wherever they're from, would say that they're kind. They say that the people they know, their friends and their family, they're kind to them. And even myself, if I lined up the fruits of the Spirit, would probably put kindness last in what I excel at most. I would still say that I'm kind to my friends and my family. So it's actually really hard to not appear kind sometimes. But in fact, is our kindness often relegated to those few close people around us that we surround ourselves with and that we like and we enjoy spending time with? Because it shouldn't be. And as Christians, we're called to be set apart and to be different. And one of the ways that can easily distinguish that among us is how we treat everyone that we meet, every person that we come across, and that's to show them kindness, the same kindness that God shows us. Now, God knew what He was doing when He was putting together the Bible, and it's full of references and stories to kindness. And actually, there's loads of bases for us to base kindness on from there. And as I was preparing for this morning, I came across these verses in Philippians, which sums up really well what I think kindness should look like for us in our everyday lives. So if you want to just find Philippians 2 with me, and I'm just going to read verses 3 and 4. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. I'm just going to read that again. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. So the reason I really like these verses is that it clearly tells us how to be kind to each other, and also it does it in a way that isn't narrow or unreliable or a silly catchphrase, because you see lots of things passed around on Facebook and Instagram telling you about kindness. They sound great, and they may work in a few situations, but they don't necessarily work when you apply it to everything. Stuff that even my mum likes to say, like kindness always costs, or sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. Contradictory phrases like that. Now, kindness may sometimes cost you something, that's for sure. Be it it's your time or your energy or your money. But in reality, if after service I stop and I tell Jake that I really enjoyed your drumming this morning, Jake. Or Phoebe, I really enjoyed your singing this morning and what you brought in as well. That doesn't cost me anything. That's maybe cost me 5 seconds of my life. That's not a cost. And then how can you be cruel to be kind? Because if I'm cruel to someone, I'm not being kind. You're just being cruel. It's silly. So there's a couple of things that I want to pick out from the verses. And I've never been a fan of doing things the same way that most people would. So I actually want to start at the second half of the verses, which talks about looking out for yours and other people's interests. And I wanted to highlight this because to me it's really important to understand this before we look at what kindness is. And that's, although it is important and we should be putting other people's first, we should also be looking out for ourselves in that as well. Because although our kindness can cost and there may be a risk to ourselves, we shouldn't be doing that to a stupid level or to a sense where you stretch yourself beyond capacity. Because saying yes to every person who asks you for help is not kindness and it's not healthy. And it gets you to the point where you're of no use to anyone. So that's something that I just think is important to bear in mind. So if you have a family and you have children, what good are you to them if you spend 7 nights a week out of the home showing your kindness to other people? If you agree to help every person, then you lose that for your own life. And now another example as well Now, Jake and his fiancée Emily are getting married. If they had just bought a plot of land and they came to me and said, Jack, we spent all our money buying this land and building materials, but we want you to design the house for us because we can't afford an architect. So I know you've got friends that are architects, so maybe you've picked up something from them. It would not be kind if I said to them, sure, I'm going to help you design this house. First off, I could end up in jail because I'm not an architect and I'm practicing as an architect. Second, I have no idea how to design a safe house that's not going to collapse the second someone closes the door, or it's even going to function. The second they turn on the tap, they may just get muddy sludge come through and no water. So that wouldn't be kindness to me saying yes to them in that situation. And in other situations as well, your automatic yes is not necessarily kindness. Now, although I wouldn't say yes to designing them a house in that situation, that doesn't mean you can say no to anything that doesn't appeal to you or feel like you can help with. Because there is still ways to show kindness, even if it's not what they ask. I can do other things in those situations. If I wasn't as poor as them, then I could offer to pay. I can say, Jake, Emily, I love you guys. Here's some money so that you can have your house designed. Or here's half the money to help you. And even failing that, we're given talents by God that we can use. So I can say, you know what, guys, I'll sit down with you. I'll look at your bank statements, your finances, and I can help you budget. And then in 6 months' time, you've got the money to pay for the architect. Just because you can't see an obvious way to help doesn't give an excuse not to show or offer kindness to people. Because being kind isn't always the obvious yeses to every cry for help. But it doesn't mean you can ignore them either. Because we should look to be kind at every opportunity. And in lots of ways, that will often require very little time or effort. But still, we should still be looking to do those. And be cautious and aware of what we're saying our yeses to. Because we're of no use to anybody if we've worked ourselves into the ground and we're having a nervous breakdown about how on earth I can fit helping everyone and showing everyone kindness into my day. Now, remembering that and seeing how important it is to use how we use our kindness is how do we actually know what kindness is and how do we apply that to ourselves? Because the concept here is really simple, and that's when we act, do we consider others before ourselves and look to better them in the process? Do we put others ahead of ourselves and push them to succeed in what they do? And do we take time out of our own days to push someone else? Because for us to show kindness consistently, it's so important to do that, even in the small everyday things, and to take those moments and opportunities, because it's probably not that often where you're given a moment to change someone's life massively with kindness. Instead, it is finding the small things in the everyday that allow us to show kindness. And it can be really simple things. So I remember 10 or so years ago when myself and Joe, who's convening this morning, were still in youth. And we'd looked at a Bible study on kindness. And Joe, like most young drivers, wasn't necessarily the most calm or joyful or patient of drivers. And after this Bible study, he decided that at least once per day, he was going to show kindness to other people on the roads. So he would stop to let at least one car out of a junction or slow down and stop for a pedestrian to cross the road in front of him, instead of just speeding off and ignoring them, which he'd be well within his rights to do. But instead, he wanted to show these just random strangers a little bit of kindness every day. And it might sound silly, and it might seem like a tiny thing, but for him, it was a way to practice kindness in the everyday. And in doing those things, that helps build habits. And then when kindness comes easy in the smaller things, that will slowly creep more and more into your life and become more and more natural. And you know what? Kindness is infectious. If someone is constantly showing you kindness, it's really hard not to be kind back to them and to reflect that on others. Another thing that my mum likes to say is kill them with kindness. It's really hard to be mean to someone who's constantly kind to you. And if everyone started to apply that principle, and kindness became easy for everyone, and as you're practicing it, all of a sudden, you don't need to worry about the cost to yourself. I don't need to worry that I'm giving all of my life savings so Jake and Emily can build a house. Because I know that those around me are going to, I'm not sorry, Jake. It wouldn't cover it. I wouldn't need to worry about giving that money away to them, because I would know that the people around me are doing the same thing for me and looking out for me in the same way. That even though I've given out that cost, they'll be looking to cover it for me too. So if everybody within church and outside of church looked to put those around them first every day, I can't see how every aspect of people's lives wouldn't increase and flourish. But that's not always the case. And because of that, it actually takes real bravery for us to step out and to show kindness, especially if it's to someone we don't know. And it can be daunting to approach a stranger in any situation, but especially if it's something that may seem strange or weird, or as we show them kindness, and we're not knowing how they're going to react. Are they going to be scared of us? Are they going to think we're crazy? Or in fact, are they even going to react angrily or violently at what we say to them? But when we do, it is important to trust God in those moments. Because actually throughout the Bible, there's two different types of kindness referred to. The first is the kindness that I've just been talking about, and that's the kindness that we show to each other. And the second, is God's loving kindness that he shows us. And then in certain translations of the Bible, that appears one word as loving kindness squeezed together. Now, God's kindness, his loving kindness, is the kindness that he shows us in his unconditional love he has for us. And unlike humans, God is perfect, and his love and his kindness is never failing. His loving kindness will never fail us, and that is something to hold on to and remember. And even if our kindness is met by ridicule and laughter and anger, and treated with suspicion by people, because it might seem too good to be true, it doesn't matter, because I know that today, tomorrow, whatever comes, I know that God will still love me no matter what. No matter how many times I try and fail to show God's kindness, his love for me is never going to change. And throughout the Bible, there is hundreds, possibly even thousands of examples of his loving kindness. Now, his provision for the Israelites when they're fleeing from Pharaoh, his protection of Daniel and his friends in captivity, David as he faced Goliath, the prophets he sent to tell of Jesus' birth, his death and his resurrection, and his provision of the Holy Spirit. Each one of those shows God's loving kindness towards us. And in each of those examples that I've given there, when you look at them, when he shows up with his loving kindness, the miracles happened. When the Israelites were in the desert for 40 years, hundreds of thousands, millions of them, he supplied them with food and water every day. He made the clouds rain manna and water spring from rocks. When Daniel was in captivity, he's thrown into a lion's den, and he closes the lion's mouths. When his friends are due to be thrown into a furnace that was so hot, the guards that approached it died. They came out not even smelling the smoke, with not a burn on them. When David stood before Goliath with nothing but a sling and a stone, God's loving kindness kept him safe. When Jesus was born, a miraculous birth from a virgin, he was killed, and he rose again. And when he ascended to heaven, God gave us his Holy Spirit. Each time God shows his loving kindness, miracles happen. So next time you're wondering, what can my small acts of kindness achieve? Even these tiny, maybe insignificant acts, how can they actually help anyone? To use a few examples that can happen within the church, if a church member has someone close to them in their family or friend die, then often someone in their life group or someone who serves on a team with them, they will arrange for meals to be made for them and delivered to their house. So that in that trying time, there's one less thing for them to worry about. Or to a more extreme example, what if I go out and as I'm walking around, I see a homeless man who's an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I show him kindness in that situation? What can our actions do in those situations? And whilst we should never underestimate them and the impact that kindness can have on people's lives, my kindness isn't going to break people's addictions. My kindness isn't going to mend the brokenheartedness. So why should we do that? And why should we reflect God's kindness to us, to other people? And we should do it because when we show kindness, then we show God through our actions, and we create space for him to work in that, for him to show his loving kindness. And when we've just seen, when God shows up with loving kindness, miracles can happen. And every time, in those things we mentioned, as he shows his loving kindness, those miracles come, and God is capable, because he can break the addictions. He can mend the brokenhearted. And you know, the only limit that we put on God is the limit that we put on him ourselves. Because he's the same God who spoke the earth into motion, whose son called Lazarus his name, and he rose from the grave and walked out. Like God does unimaginable things that we were never able to do, unimaginable things that we couldn't even imagine when we make space for him to work. And although each one of us is far from perfect and may look at the fruits of the Spirit and think, man, I'm never going to be very patient. I'm never going to love every person I come across. I'm never going to be full of joy. I'm never going to be kind. God excels at each and every one of them. And by us demonstrating just one of the fruits of the Spirit, we open the possibility for someone to experience God. And then God comes in his fullness with all of those. And who knows what kindness will look like for each person. And trying to keep in mind those verses, and we have it in our hearts and minds to constantly serve others and to put them before ourselves, then in doing so we create an incredible space for God to work in. And that all starts with us as individuals and as a church. Because if we showed kindness to every person we met every day, then this building would be filled beyond capacity each week, and the consequences would be so far-reaching beyond just our small town. And that's something that I want to see happening. We want this building to be overflowing. We want people to know Jesus and be on fire and in love with him. And this is something so simple that we can do. And every one of us, I'm sure, is often given opportunities to show people they don't know well, or people even they do know well, kindness. And it's so important to actually be ready when those opportunity comes. And one of the ways for that becomes easier is to spend time with God. And the more time you spend praying and talking to God, and the more time you spend listening to him, the more of his heart you understand, and the more of his characteristics you begin to understand and then display. Putting aside time regularly with God is so beneficial, and you start to see more of his character come through in your lives. Because like anyone else, like you have a relationship with God. If I have a friend and I go to him and say, I really need you to do this, this, and this for me, please. Oh, and thanks for what you did last time. And then moved on to do something else that I wanted to. That would be a terrible relationship. I would just be using that friend for what I wanted, and they would be getting hardly anything from it. And that can be the same with our relationship with God. We can go to God and just go with a shopping list of things that you want God to do, and then throw in your thank yous for what he has done from the last time. And they're just the same as it would be with anyone else. Your relationship with God doesn't flourish when that happens. The relationships with God and with people, they grow when you spend time with them. When you put aside deliberate time just to spend with them, quality time to enjoy, then you begin to understand more of them, and they begin to understand more of you, and you become more comfortable in their presence. So I think it's really important that as a church and as Christians, that we spend regular time with God with no agenda. With just time to spend relaxing and being in his presence. And that might look different for some people. For me, it often means I sit there with worship music on, with a playlist on, and then just enjoy being in God's presence and talk and listen. For some others, it might be sitting in silence. They may just enjoy that quietness. Others, it may be just talking and praying out loud to God. But it's so important to find that time to do it. And because then the more you do it, in those moments, the more you hear from God. And the more you hear from God, the more used to you are from hearing from him and what he is saying to you. So what I want to do is challenge everyone here today to do two things over the next few weeks. The first one is to set aside once a week, 45 minutes to an hour, with no agenda other than to spend time with God. Get used to being in his presence, listen to what he's saying, hearing what he wants you to do, and just enjoying your relationship with him growing. And then if we do that, what I want us to do, the second bit comes a lot easier. I want to wake up every morning and pray and say, God, give me a chance to show someone your kindness today. And then when we do that, then God will give us opportunities. But it's so important that we do both, because that first bit of spending time with God, you get used to hearing God. You get used to his promptings and knowing what he's telling you. So when those opportunities come, he makes them so clear to you. It'll be so obvious that this is a God-given moment. And then in those moments, your kindness is so easy because God has put that on your heart and you're acting on what he's told you to do. So if we do both those things, then those kindness situations become so much easier and so much more natural. And not only that, our relationship with God grows as well because of it. So it may seem daunting, it may seem hard because I know everybody is busy. Just to find 45 minutes to an hour in a week of absolute free time may seem hard. I can't stress how important and how good it is to spend that time with God. It's something that I enjoy doing. I definitely don't do it once a week, but it's something that I'm going to do over the next few weeks, is make sure I have this time put aside and do the same thing and pray every morning and ask God to give me those opportunities. And as we do that, then we just got to take those opportunities and understand what God is doing in those. And then, because kindness doesn't come naturally to me, to strangers. I don't really like talking to people I don't know. I don't even like talking to some people I do know. Sorry, Jake. But you take those opportunities when God gives them to you. And you see your relationship grow with God as you spend time with Him. And you just have that understanding of what He wants you to do in those situations. And when you do that, then you reflect God's kindness to them. And you allow them to experience part of God and for His loving kindness to work in their life. And then He can do amazing things. But also, I think the really important thing to remember is when we see those opportunities, we may not see the good of our work after that. It may not even seem like anything has happened. And it's important not to be scared and not to be worried and not to be disheartened. And just to remember that actually, whatever we do, however we show kindness, whether successful or unsuccessful we may think it is, that at the end of the day, when we go home and we go to sleep, not to worry, because God is walking with us in every step of that. And unlike humans and unlike us, God's love and kindness will never fail us. So there's no reason to be afraid as we step out, and just to go knowing that we may fail each other, but God's not going to fail us with His kindness. So as we go today, I just want people to go and just be challenged by those two things, and just to see what happens when they start to show those things in their lives.